Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about how to remove yourself from toxic family situations, and I have my own toxic family situation that I'll tell you guys about later. Without further ado, let's get started. So before we get started today, I just wanted to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell to make sure you get notified every time I release a new video. It definitely helps this channel grow, and the more this channel grows, the more content I can create. So I would consider it like a personal favor if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, okay? So I told you guys I have my own kind of personal family toxicity story, and I'm not gonna get into like the bulk of it because it involves talking about things that I personally, if I was in their position, I wouldn't want it to be spoken about without my consent. So I will just say that I have a couple of family members who are incredibly manipulative, and like generally I do still love them and I want them to do well, and I want them to have happiness in life, and I want them to experience joy and like have things go right for them. But I just have found that I cannot be involved in their day-to-day. I can't really keep a close relationship with them because when I do, it makes me a little crazy. And because of some of the incredibly hurtful and damaging things that they've done in the last, 15 years, I can't with them. So I have personally cut myself off from some of my toxic family, and it is very difficult. I'm not gonna lie, it sucks and it feels very isolating, especially if you find that some of your family is really good at manipulating the rest of your family. It can be very isolating, and I'm not gonna say that it's easy, but when it comes to your sanity, having your sanity or having your family, I would rather choose having my sanity at the end of the day. The relationships that I do have with family members are very strong because I have set my boundaries and they've set their boundaries, and it's easy to have that good family dynamic when you both respect each other and when you're willing to compromise to respect other people's boundaries. So a lot of people think, you have your family and you have to stick by them through thick and thin, and I do agree with that. If anything happened to the couple of family members that I've been talking about, I would be there for them in a second. Like if one of them ended up in the hospital, or if there was some like horribly traumatic thing that they couldn't figure out on their own that was going to like end their life, I would 100% be there. But when it comes to the day-to-day manipulations and, bad decision making, there's only so much that you can do. And if you make yourself crazy to bend to their will, then they will just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. There's never an end. So I personally have found that removing myself from the situation makes me feel a lot better about it, even if I don't get the relationship that I would like with them. You may be wondering, what exactly are you talking about when you talk about a toxic family member? So let's talk about some of the signs that your family member may be toxic. So one of the things that I see most online is people using the word toxic in a very willy-nilly fashion. So I want to just get it out there. A person that you don't like is not toxic. A person that you find to be unpleasant or, depressing is not toxic. Chances are, if you are thinking that anyone that expresses a negative viewpoint of the world is toxic, then you probably need to do a little work on yourself, because that is not very compassionate and that is extremely judgmental. So if you feel like people who tend to be more pessimistic are toxic, you're denying their right to have complex emotions about issues, and that's a problem too. Like obviously if someone's always kind of a downer, then yeah, it's not fun to hang around them all the time, but that doesn't make them toxic. And I think it's really important to set that distinction so that you can determine when someone is manipulating you or when you just don't really like hanging out with someone. One of the most common signs that someone could be a toxic person is that they lie often, and this can be about pretty much anything. The relatives that I have kind of adiosed from my life lie about pretty much anything to make sure that other people feel the same way that they do about both me and my mother, and to also get what they want from people. It's used as a manipulation tactic, so it's used to keep you in your place, it's used to keep everyone operating operating in the type of theatrics that the person wants ultimately. So they might look at other people as pawns to get them what they want, rather than as family members who have their own insecurities, their own things that, make them happy, the things that they want in life. They don't necessarily consider that. It's all about them at the end of the day. The second thing kind of ties in with the first thing, and that is manipulation. Part of manipulation could be lying. It could also be using their negative viewpoint, their negative experiences to get you to do things for them, or it could be playing people against each other. So that's the most common one, is playing people against each other, telling stories to this person, telling a different story to this person, and a different story to this person to get them all working against each other and all working for you. So that's another thing to look out for, is manipulation. The third thing to look out for is if this person does not take responsibility for their actions. That's a big one. They don't want to take responsibility for their actions. Nothing is their fault. They're just the victim in everything, and they need your help. And if you think it's their fault, then you're just being a horrible person and you don't deserve to be part of their family. That's a big one. If they play the victim all the time, that's a big sign. The fourth thing to look out for is if the person is controlling. So, and I don't mean controlling like a person who's naturally like a type A personality, like needs to have everything in control and likes to take over when it's like social time. I mean controlling in a way like, are you sure you want to wear that? All right, well, I guess it's your life. Or, honey, you would look so much better if you would do XYZ. So are you still working at the restaurant? Oh, well, when were you going to go back to school? Being kind of condescending and expecting you to, cater to them. Another way that they can control it is by trying to isolate you from your finances. So if they always have something that requires your money, that's a form of control. And there are obviously multiple ways to be controlling, but those are just a couple of examples for you. So again, I have said that obviously they like to play the victim. They like to play the victim, the martyr, whatever you want to call it. They essentially want people to look at them as, oh, poor her, she's dealing with so much. Did you know that she has this and this and this happening in her life? And sometimes all those things are happening. Sometimes it's because of things that they've done. Sometimes it is lies that they're telling to try to get people to do things for them. So it's important to really think about the things that they're saying and the way that they're presenting it, and making sure that if you feel like they're constantly playing the victim, that you have evidence of the things that they're saying. Don't just take them at their word. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is that toxic people tend to not be respectful of boundaries, and in fact sometimes they're very defensive when you mention that you have a boundary about something. And that's that's an obvious red flag for pretty much any person. If they don't respect your boundaries, if they argue with you about your boundaries, then that's probably a person that you don't want to be around very often. Another thing that I want to mention, and this is it's a difficult thing to think about, but oftentimes when you've been around toxic people for long enough, you might start picking up some of their personality traits. So it is worth it to consider if you are truly an innocent bystander in this relationship, or if you have actually picked up on some of those toxic behaviors that your family member may or may not possess. So in this process, make sure you're being open and honest with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses, and make sure you're doing work to heal yourself while you separate yourself from your toxic family members, because that's going to be your most important thing that you have to do, is to learn how to take care of yourself and to learn how to be honest with yourself if you've picked up some bad behaviors. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention before I get into my tips is that I'm only talking about garden variety toxic behavior. I am not talking about abuse. You are absolutely welcome to react to your abuser however you choose. You are not required to be polite with them. You are not required to be compassionate with them. Oftentimes people say that it's easier to be compassionate with your abuser, but I feel like that's putting the onus on the victim of abuse to behave in a certain way, instead of putting the onus on the abuser to change their ways and to apologize and try to make things right. So I say, if you've been physically, sexually abused, if you've been emotionally abused for a very long time by someone, then you choose how you want to approach that. Obviously, therapy needs to be involved. You need to really do some self-work to make sure that you're processing your emotions around abuse in a positive way, and you're not allowing that to create negativity in the rest of your life. So obviously you will still continue to feel the effects of the abuse for a while. if not forever. However, there's a difference in feeling the effects of the abuse and knowing how to cope with that, and then allowing your previous abuse to color the rest of your life and everything that you do in a very negative way, and to feel that it holds you back instead of being an experience that you've processed and you've learned how to cope with. And that's what therapy does. Like, it's not a magic trick. You can't go to a therapist for 6 months and expect to be healed, but they do give you coping tools. And I always recommend that people go see a therapist when they have had issues like abuse or even toxic relationships. Just learning how to best approach the situation and how to best cope with it. Some really great coping skills. That's what you need when you've been through traumatic events. All right, let's move on to the tips of how to extract yourself from a toxic relationship with a family member. So the big thing is you're most likely not going to be able to take yourself completely out of the equation and just never see them again. They're family. You will likely run into them again. So it's good to not entirely burn the bridge if possible, because you want those family interactions to not be re-traumatizing for you. So my first piece of advice is to write out what you're going to say to them, and to write it out as concisely and compassionately as you possibly can. So we're not throwing barbs here. We're not calling people names. We're not saying, you always do this. We're just laying it out on the line, what we feel. We're giving examples of why we feel that way. And then we're saying, I need to take time and space to work on myself and to get back to a good place where I can work on our relationship. So likely they're going to try to bait you into an argument. That's just a thing that happens, and people get defensive, and the first line of defense is often an argument. So you need to prepare a sentence in advance that shuts down the argument, and you need to be prepared to repeat it as many times as you need to get the point across. So an example that I've written up for you guys: you're very demanding of our time, and you're very demanding of me as a person and my resources, but I often feel like it's not reciprocated in our relationship. And give an example. I also am concerned about the amount of drama that tends to follow you, and I'm really trying to make my life as simple as I possibly can, and I can't have the drama in my life right now. So I need to take some space and just really work on myself, and then maybe in a few months we can get back together and talk about things. And the big thing is, I always want to explain to people, like, I don't want to just ghost you. I don't want to just disappear on you. I want to tell you what's going on in our relationship, but I don't want that to feel like this is open to conversation. This isn't a conversation. I'm telling you what I need, and then you can either respect it or you don't respect it. But this is what I need. This is what I'm going to take. I'm taking time to work on myself. And then if they start to argue with you, just saying something simple like, I understand that this is very upsetting to you. I totally get it, but I don't feel like a conversation or an argument is going to benefit either of us at this point. So let's take a few months and then come back to it after we've thought about it for a while. And the second tip is take your space. And that means do not respond to emails, text messages, voicemails. Don't respond to other people asking you to talk to them. Just say, I need to take my space, and really hold to it. And that's going to be challenging for you at first, because you've most likely been doing this song and dance for quite a while, and it's going to be kind of in your nature to respond to every little thing. So I would say, make sure you're reminding yourself to really take that space once you say you want it. Another point on that one is to remove access to social media, if they actually are on social media. And I always recommend doing it in the most delicate way possible if you feel like you're going to be able to retain a relationship with this family member. And that is to put them on a filter and only allow them to see things that you don't care if everybody knows. Because at that point, you're basically posting articles or random pictures, maybe a dog meme or two. So nothing that is really important to you. If the relationship is unhealthy enough to the point that you know you can't trust them with any information, with any ability to contact, then block away. My third tip is to understand and accept. So accepting doesn't mean tolerating. It doesn't mean being okay with someone overstepping your boundaries. It means this person will likely never change. It doesn't do you any favors, and it doesn't do them any favors to continue to try to change their outlook, to change their personality, to change their behavior. They likely are not going to do any of that, and you have to be okay with it. So if you allow yourself to harbor the idea that maybe I can change them, maybe I can talk some sense into them, then you're just putting yourself at risk for for more disappointment, for more disconnect from your family. So just understand and accept that they are who they are. That doesn't mean that you have to accept abuse or accept their drama. It just means that you have to accept that they are who they are. And all you can do is be the best person that you can be. Another thing that you have to accept is that their view of you, if they are toxic, their view of you is likely not going to be very positive after you've put up your boundaries and really stuck to them. The toxic family member may at that point refer to you as toxic. They might refer to you as a drama queen, as an instigator, and they might try to portray you as those things to your other family members. And all you can do at that point is, if anyone mentions something like that, to just say, I'm sorry she feels that way, or I'm sorry he feels that way, and keep being your usual self. You know, you can't control what someone thinks about you, but you can control how you react to them. So just make sure that your reactions are coming from a place of love and acceptance, and just saying, you know, I can't change what this person behaves like, but I can prove that I myself am behaving like a respectful person. And then another big part of that is just making sure that you're not taking it personally, because it's gonna suck at first. I mean, it doesn't feel good to have people say really horrible, untrue, and negative things about you to anyone who will listen, but you can't take it personally because it's not about you. So yeah, it's still gonna hurt. Yeah, it's still gonna kind of make you feel like things are stacked against you, but it's not about you, so you can't take it personally. The minute you start taking it personally, you're gonna start being defensive about it. You're gonna start trying to argue with all these things that this person is saying, and it's gonna get back into the same toxic cycle that it's been in. Another thing that I wanted to warn you about is that the abuse might get worse before it gets better. So this person may decide, because you have stood up for yourself, you've said what you needed to say, and you've cut them off, that they want to get really defensive and they want to kind of go on a rampage against you, thinking that you might be telling other people about what you think. So that's just a warning to you. It's likely going to get worse before it gets better, but don't let that deter you. I mean, it has to happen the way that it happens, and eventually all things come to light. So you have to kind of stay the course and make sure you're holding your boundaries, make sure you're not getting sucked back into the drama. That's the big one. And make sure you're working on yourself. You can't change anything that they choose to do. You can't change what people believe or what people will listen to. You can change how you behave and how you keep your boundaries up. And my last piece of advice is to be firm but kind. There's really no reason to be unkind to someone, even if they have been unkind to you in the past. And again, that's not about like long-standing abuse of a person, like physical, mental, emotional, sexual, like that's a completely different level. I'm just talking about toxic family members, people who are manipulative, people who play the victim, people who are frequent liars, like that's what I'm talking about. There's really no reason to be unkind to them. It is likely that they can't really help who they are, or they can't see who they are, and you're not doing yourself any favors, you're not doing them any favors by throwing barbs, by calling names, by making things ugly. And also, if you want to keep a relationship with the other members of your family, it behooves you to behave as kindly and compassionately as you possibly can to this person who is toxic. So again, keep your boundaries, say what you need to say, but there's no reason to be ugly about it. Resist the urge to blame, resist the urge to call names, resist the urge to be petty, and make sure you're keeping yourself up to those high standards too. So you're trying to remove the toxic person from your life. Make sure you're not then becoming toxic. And that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope this helped you out. I hope this at least gave you some clarity on things that you can do to kind of help your situation. Obviously, it's still going to be hard. There's nothing easy about having those conversations with your family members, especially, and with family members who tend to be defensive and who tend to play the victim. It's going to be very challenging for you, but I think knowing what you're getting into makes everything a little bit easier, and also having like a really solid game plan. So make sure you write out your sentences, make sure you've rehearsed them so that you don't go off track, you don't get into an argument. Make sure you have your blocking sentence if they try to argue with you. And most of all, make sure you're taking care of yourself. That's the big one, because likely you've been suffering some pretty gross abuse, and you need to make sure that you're not taking on those ugly personality traits. You're not taking on any of the things that they might say about you, because at the end of the day, that's not really who you are. That's just who they want other people to believe you are. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, and if you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. I make new videos sometimes. Again, I'll tell you guys about that next week. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video today. If you did, if you want to comment on your family experience, how you dealt with toxic family members or toxic friends even, and then just put that in the comments below. It's awesome when the community can kind of get together and help each other out. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Mwah. I haven't yet gotten my monetization back. No live streaming for me until I actually get the monetization back, because then I will have chat feature, and it's kind of boring to watch someone just doing something without being able to chat at them. Please be on the lookout for that. Again, make sure you hit the little bell so that you get all of those notifications in your YouTube.